Fighting to Find Peace, a Belfast boxer's journey, with a foreword by Barry McGuigan, is an autobiography by now retired Belfast boxer Eamon McAuley. This book highlights McAuley's journey from his childhood at the heights of the Troubles in Belfast, his family's history in boxing, his own career in boxing, and his life experiences. Eamon, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Eamon, I want to understand your childhood, the journey, the same, what you got involved. Tell me a bit about your childhood, the environment you grew up in.
Well, I was born in 1966. The Troubles broke out in 1969. So I can't remember 69, but I remember 1971 internment when we had to flee Ardoyne, the district where I live, and we had to go over the border. We ended up in a place called Gormanstown, which was in County Meath. And while we were there, my mother's two cousins, Dorothy McGuire and Maura Meakin, were shot dead in one of the earliest shoot to kill things. So it was pretty traumatic coming from Ardoyne. We had next door neighbours either side of us shot dead. My sister seen Sid McKee get shot dead outside our front window. My father was shot 3 times in 2 separate shootings, one by the IRA and one by loyalists. And he was also in a big car bomb explosion in Etna Drive in 1977, and which killed 2 people. And how my father came out of that car alive, I will never know. It's truly amazing. So the Troubles, yes, my best friend was shot dead when he was 15. When I was 15, we sat together in school. Danny Barrett, God rest his soul. So the Troubles was then daily. I mean, it could go on and on and on and on and on here about things that happened, but you were just immune to it. It was just normality. I never knew anything different.
The Troubles were a crazy time in Northern Ireland. How did this affect you as a child? Tell me, what was your coping mechanism?
I love sport. I was always into sport, and I was always doing things, playing football, keeping fit. And my father came from a boxing background. His uncle was actually world flyweight champion, British Empire, European, and undefeated world flyweight champion, Rinty Monaghan, 1947 to 1950. So we came from a boxing background, and my father run the Ardoyne Boxing Club, and his brother Sean ran the Leganeel Boxing Club, which is celebrating its 50th birthday. The Troubles impacted in every way all our lives up here. We lived Ardoyne as a small Catholic enclave surrounded by larger Protestant areas, and loyalist paramilitaries used to come in, and there would be drive-by shootings, and they would be in and out with impunity. So you had to watch out for passing cars. This was some sort of psychological thing in your head. You couldn't walk along the Berwick, you couldn't walk along the streets. You were constantly looking out for cars because of drive-by shootings. But getting back to when I was really young, when I was a kid, it was just normality. I didn't know anything else. We played in the street. We done everything that other kids done. We just didn't let the Troubles affect us.
Even though the Troubles were a crazy time, your book details that the Troubles brought a sense of community. Tell us about this.
Strangely enough, my mother said when we lived in Fairfield Street, during the worst years of the Troubles, my mother says it was the best time of her life. But probably because our kids were young, we were young. But yes, it impacted us. It was just day and daily. The British Army would stop us and searches and question us, P-check us, and put us up against a wall. And we had guns pointed at us every day in our life. They were firing rubber bullets. 2 of our favourite games was hopping lorries and chasing rubber bullets. That was normality to us. That's when we were kids. That's how we played. It was all exciting, trying to get a rubber bullet, trying to get them to shoot at you, and then chasing after the rubber bullet. And then when they left the area where they were shooting them from, if you went up and got the cartridge, then you had the full set, and then you could sell it to some gullible journalist.
Chasing rubber bullets and hopping lorries were very different times. Tell us about hopping lorries.
Jump on the back of it to get a ride from it.
Okay.
It would be passing by a lorry, maybe a big beer lorry to deliver beer to local bars, and we would wait for it to come down, and we would all jump in the back of it and get a ride down Butler Street to Flack Street. All kicks.
So your book describes some very high-risk games you undertook as a kid. One of these was climbing drain pipes. Tell us about this.
We would have played chases on the school roof. We were fearless, believe me, absolutely fearless, especially my sister Tanya. And we would climb up the spouts, and we would jump from the school onto the mobile, which, I mean, when I look at it now, I mean, it is truly death defying. My sister could do it first, and I kept bringing her back and saying, do it again, do it again. I mean, it was really death defying. I mean, I don't want to overstate the magnitude of how dangerous it was, but it was truly death defying. If you offered me £1,000,000 now, I wouldn't do it. But we were nuts. We were fearless, and we basically, you know, our parents were you know, different times. Our parents maybe weren't as diligent as what parents are today, and there was a struggle going on here. So we practically ran the streets. As I said in the book, I'd have went to school. Then after school, I would have been in my granny's, and then would have went up to my mum and dad's for my dinner, and then I would have went back out again. And then at maybe 10 o'clock, 9:30, my mother would have been calling for us to come back in because we had school the next morning.
A boy's surrounding an environment in his early to mid-teenage years will shape and mold him greatly. Tell me about where you were in your life in the mid-70s to mid-80s. What kind of environment were you in, and what kind of character more so were you? How did it all shape and mold you?
A bit sensitive, a bit of a loner. Fell in love with boxing. I was a great footballer.
That's me holding the programme, the Cliftonville Portadown 1979 Bass Irish Cup final programme. And I was there at the age of 13. I was there when Cliftonville, the underdogs, scored a last minute winner. Tony Bell, who was playing for us, but was from Portadown, he scored the winner. And Spoyne Cup just went crazy.
And I went to play a trial match to pick a Northern Ireland team against Wales. And there was enough players to play against each other. So that's what we done. And my side won 4-2, and I scored 2 of the goals and featured heavily in the game. Norman Whiteside, I don't know if you've heard of Norman Whiteside, Manchester United legend, youngest player ever to play in the World Cup still. And he scored the winning goal in the 83 FA Cup final against Everton. Legend Norman Whiteside. Well, he played in that game. So I was confident of getting picked, but I wasn't. And my school said it was because I was a Catholic. And I quit playing football that day and started boxing, much to my father's consternation, because his father was a professional.
That photo would have been taken in the late 40s, early 50s. That's my grandfather, Harry McAuley, who was Northern Ireland area professional champion. And he was one of Rinty Monaghan's main sparring partners. My granddad, unfortunately, had too many hard fights, and the punches he took in the ring put him into an early grave. He died from pugilistic dementia in 1978. He was only 52. Sorry, 58. Sorry, take that back, 58. But he was ill for a lot of years, couldn't talk, and mumbled, and went out walks, and I had to be out searching for him. And this was during the conflict, during the bad years. Many of the times he was found on the Shankill Road.
Not a place an Irish boxer wants to be in the height of the troubles, no doubt.
And he developed a pugilistic dementia and died at 58. So my dad wanted me to stick with the football and not box. But I wasn't for turning back. He got 2 youth leaders to come and talk to me to try and convince me to change my mind. But I wasn't for changing.
Your book details of how one day you were challenged to a boxing match. Did you always figure yourself as a fighter? Tell us about this start.
I fell into by chance. Principally, I packed in. I would have liked to have stayed with the football, but that affected me deeply when I didn't get picked. And a guy in my class room called Anthony Monkey McBride uh, was doing a bit of boxing over in the Sacred Heart, and he challenged me to a spar. He says, "You might do me in a street fight, but I'll do you in the ring." So he said this in front of all my peers. So I accepted the challenge, never really thinking I would follow it through. But each day he kept taunting me. "You never come over to the gym. You never come over to the gym." So eventually I got fed up with him taunting me, and I went over to the gym. And I got a spar with Monkey, Anthony Monkey McBride, and he actually got the nickname Monkey because his father kept a live monkey out the backyard. So I gave him a vicious beating, and I really enjoyed it. And that was me hooked on the very first night. That was me hooked.
I want to cover more about the environment you were living in and how this shaped you and molded you. There was a man by the name of Paul Blake, and there was an incident with this man. Tell us about this.
Paul Blake was killed in 1981, the year of the hunger strikes. It was one of the worst years of the Troubles. It was dreadful. We were waiting in full-scale civil war breaking out. The atmosphere was toxic. The stench of defeat was everywhere. And yes, we were coming home from the boxing club that night, and the McGee brothers, Noel and Terry, lived in Humdene Gardens. I was living in Astoria at the time. So we bid farewell to the McGee brothers, and me and Jerry Stafford walked on the Berwick Road. And at the bottom of Astoria, I said cheerio to Jerry because he lived in the next street, Cranbrook. So as he was walking to his house, he passed Paul Blake, and they both nodded, in recognition. And as Jerry was going up his path, he seen the car pull up to Paul Blake. And as Jerry put his key in the lock, the shots rang out, and Paul Blake was shot dead. It was just another drive-by shooting. 1981 was very bad in Ardoyne for drive-by shootings because, as I say, we were a small Catholic enclave surrounded by larger Protestant areas that could come in and out with impunity, backed by British state forces.
Tell us about your father and your relationship with your father and how this shaped you and molded you.
One of the hardest men ever come out of Ireland. He was from good stock. As I say, boxing was well ingrained in his family, and he was good at boxing too, but he was a better street fighter.
That's in Fairfield Street in Ardoyne, the very early 70s. That's my father, Patsy Coco McAuley, posing. Big, strong, hard man. Loved himself also, as you can see. But yeah, he had a powerful set of arms on him. Well, he only done a bit of boxing. He won a few Irish titles as a kid and drifted away, but came back years later with his brother Sean, brought him to the Holy Family. But it was his street fighting. He had a real prowess for street fighting. He was as tough and hard as nails, and he beat more paras than you can imagine on the street. They flew over a regimental boxing champion to challenge him.
He was a big man. He had big arms. He had a ferocious punch. And the stories, he is still an Ardoyne legend and will always be an Ardoyne legend. He's passed now 2014. He was quite a character. And yeah, he knocked out more IRA men than what the British Army shot. And that got him into trouble with the IRA many times. And he fought the loyalists, he fought with the British Army. In actual fact, they flew a regimental boxing champion in from Germany, from the British Army to challenge Madad. You couldn't make this up, but believe me, Arthur, this is 100% true. And there's still people around today who witnessed it. And the regimental boxing champion and Madad squared off, and Madad eventually knocked him out. And then the British Army respected Madad. They revered him even. And there was graffiti went up on the walls the next day. Coco rules the paras. And then when I got into the ABA final in 1985 and knocked out the para Carl Crook, graffiti went up the next day in Ardoyne. McAuley's too, paras nil. So, yeah, Madad, long history. He had a very brutal and violent upbringing. As I say, he killed a fella in a street fight in Camden Town. That's in the book, so I'm not, You know, he had a brutal life, and they tortured him. And it was people who would have been scared of him, but then joined the IRA and got at him while hiding behind that organisation. That done his head in, because they wouldn't have charged, they wouldn't have picked on him or been cheeky to him only for the fact that they had joined the IRA. They wouldn't have done it without that protection.
One of the stories in your book is about you and your skinhead friends heading to the parochial hall for a disco. Tell us about this.
That's how I ended up getting sent to England, because I came back with some drink on me, and my dad smelt my breath and started shouting and bawling. And he scared the dog, and the dog run out and run onto an oncoming car. And my dad knew the driver in the car, and she was drunk too. But the dog was coming to the end anyway, because it was old, it was going blind. But he never had any umbrage with the girl who drove the car. And I didn't wait around to see if he was going to have any umbrage with me. Within a week, I was in Manchester. And he sent me to Manchester, looking back now, because I was running about with a bad crowd. He seen a bit of promise in me with the boxing, a bit of potential. But I was running about with a bad crowd, glue sniffing, drinking, getting into fights. And he thought it was better to get me out of here. And yeah, his heart was in the right place. And as I say, my dad was a good man. If he'd have never drank, he'd have been a great man. He'd have been a great man. It was the pressure, the troubles in the IRA and the shootings and bombings he came through that made him drink. And when he drank, he brought it all back to the house. He'd have shouted and bawled, and he was a nightmare. But deep down, my dad loved him. He was a good man. God rest his soul. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy life for him.
Tell us about the path you were on in the late 70s, early 80s. Where was your focus? Where was your vision? Tell us about where you were at in life.
Yeah, it was more the boxing shaped my life. It wasn't so much, you know, my daddy coming in drinking and would drink on him and fighting and wrecking the house. And it was more, when I caught the boxing bug, I mean, I really caught it. I bought all the magazines, the Ring magazine, the KO magazine, Boxing Illustrated. I really, really, really got into it in a big way. And I'm a boxing historian today. I've got a YouTube channel, and I talk about boxing on my channel. So, yeah, I wanted to be a world champion just like my uncle Rindy. But it never panned out. It never happened. But there you go.
The next phase in your life was your move to Manchester. You even got the name the Belfast Bomber. Tell us about this move. Tell us about this period of life and why the name the Belfast Bomber.
Well, it was horrific, you know, because bombs had just went off in the Arndale Centre in Manchester, killing and maiming many people, and bombs were going off all around England. So, and this guy's calling me the Belfast Bomber. So me and my uncle Jared had to go down and see this guy, Ed Barry, you called him, who was the head editor of the sport, and particularly boxing. And we sought him out, and I explained to him and asked him would he desist from calling me the Belfast Bomber, that I've come over from Belfast to get away from that. I mean, it was very silly of him, you know, but yeah, we got it sorted. I was knocking everybody out, and that's why he called me the Belfast Bomber. I don't think he realised the significance of what he was saying.
Tell us more about your progression as a boxer. Tell us about some of the key people you met, some of the key events. Tell us about this period.
Well, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. I was always homesick. I never really got over being homesick. But the boxing element of it was fantastic. I was really looked after, and I was boxing at a very high level. And I won NABC titles. I was champion of England, Scotland, and Wales. And while I was champion of England, Scotland, and Wales, I boxed the Irish junior champion at my age and weight and beat him easy. This happened twice, two different Irishmen, 2 different years, actually 2 different clubs. But I was the best boxer at my age and weight in Britain and Ireland. And then when I won the ABS in '85, I was the best senior boxer in Britain.
But tell us here, what's happening here?
That's me almost decapitating Les Rameke. That's at the Ulster Hall, 1986. My first fight, after all the hype after all the television coverage, all the newspaper coverage, this was me finally fighting in front of my own crowd. So the pressure was immense. But we clashed heads, and he came out of it the worst. Had a bad cut. The fight had to be stopped on a cut. But I felt okay. I felt good. I was on top, and we had a rematch, and I destroyed him in the rematch.
So it was very good. I came from great stock. My grandfather, Harry McAuley, was a professional pugilist also, and he married Rinty Monaghan's sister. So, and Rinty Monaghan was world champion, so it was well ingrained in the family.
That's December, just about a week before Christmas, 1982. And my father brought me down to meet my uncle, Rinty Monaghan. That's Rinty Monaghan, undefeated world flyweight champion. That's about a year before Rinty died. That's me. My dad made me take my top off, and he says, puff your chest out. And I still remember it very, very well. Rinty was shadowboxing in my face, and I was worried that he was going to connect because the punches were within a millimetre of landing. You know, but he was so adept at doing it. He was shadowboxing her, quite a character. And that's him holding the Hall of Fame trophy in his hands there. But Rinty was a character and a half.
It's in the breeding. So I loved it. Boxing was great. The English people were great. I have to say that the English people really supported me, really followed me. And yeah, Coach Loads used to go and watch me when I boxed in championships. I mean, boxing gave me a real buzz. And my whole life was boxing.
So another iconic black and white photographs here. Tell us about the moment. What's happening?
That's up in Preston, Guildhall. That's the ABA senior semi-finals. And that's me landing a right hand to a Welshman called Robert Smythe. Robert Smythe had previously a very controversial win over me, which, in my opinion, I was robbed blind. So when I drew him in the semi-finals, I knew I was going to beat him. I knew I could beat him because I know I won the first fight. But since the first fight, I had moved to London and had been getting great sparring with Billy Hardy and Rocky Kelly. So I was very, very confident I would beat Smythe, and I stopped him in the third round and a one-sided fight.
I want to describe more of what life was like as a boxer, the pressures you were under. At one stage, you ended up fighting a very high-profile British figure, a British boxer. What was this like for you as a Catholic coming from Northern Ireland?
It's hard to describe the pressure I was under coming from Republican Ardoyne and being up against a paratrooper. And with my dad's history with a parachute regiment and with fighting them, it put me under tremendous pressure. It really did. And everybody back home, I was living in London then, I knew everybody back home would be watching the fight against this paratrooper. And immense pressure. But when you're young, sometimes, you know, you don't really feel the pressure too much, you know. And not only that, but I was up against it because this kid was a really good boxer. He was the favoured. He was more established. He was 2 years older than me. He had been beaten in the 1984 ABA finals by Alec Dixon Olympic year. So he was very experienced, and I was the underdog getting in. But I had to win this fight. I just had to win this fight. I couldn't lose this fight. I couldn't lose it. You'd have had to nail me to the canvas. Just the first round was a quiet round, a feeling out round. The second round, it exploded. And it was 3 standing counts and a knockdown. And Card's nose was actually broken in 3 places. It was a violent fight because I just had to win. But then he went in with the same objectives. So we you know, we both went at it in a big, big way.
That's May the 3rd, 1985. I'm boxing here at Wembley Arena in front of 10,000 people against a guy who served in a parachute regiment. And with the history we had here up north, a parachute regiment, it put me under an awful lot of pressure. Coming from Republican Ardoyne, if I lost, I might not have been welcome back in Ardoyne. But It was a great fight. It was a terrific fight, but I was so determined. I was only 19. Carl Crook had more experience than me. He had been combined services champion the year 4 times. He had been ABA finalist the year before, and a very experienced boxer. Oh, what a right hand. And that punch actually broke his nose in 3 places. Such a punch. My father always preached to me, catch them coming in. And it was under a wee bit of pressure. I gave Carl a standing count, and he gave me 2 standing counts and nearly had me out of there. But as he was coming in to finish it, I loaded up on the big right hand, and it landed. And I was the first Irishman, I think, in 50 years to win an ABA title. That's myself for throwing a punch to the nose of Carl Crook, who I boxed in the ABA final. Carl, of course, was a member of the parachute regiment, and he would go on to win the Lonsdale belt, which the 2 of us are holding there. He won the Commonwealth title also and defended both belts 5 or 6 times. Carl was number 4 in the world when Pernell Whittaker was undisputed world lightweight champion. So a lovely fella, a great boxer. And that's us meeting up in Barry Hearn's camp in Romford, 1981.
What was your relationship like after that fight?
We boxed in 85. That was 91 when I went over to box for Barry Hearn at Romford. And as soon as he seen me enter the gym, he come over and hugged me. And that's the sort of guy he is. But yes, found him to be a lovely, pleasant, charming man.
Your dad, when you came back to Northern Ireland, set up a number of fights for you, but ultimately you made the decision to go pro. What was this time like? Was it exciting? Was it daunting? Tell us about this.
I injured my nose in the ABA final too. As I said earlier, it was a brutal fight. I got an injury to my nose and I had to go over to Harley Street to get it fixed. But I was out of boxing for a year after winning the ABAs, and it was in the form of my life. And I wanted to box for Ireland. I wanted to represent my country. I wanted to go to the Europeans, the Worlds, the Olympics, because money can't buy that. But this damn nose injury kept me out of boxing for a year. And Barney Eastwood is a very persuasive man. He sent people to my house. He had people who would have, the barber, Rob McGuire, for instance, I used to get my hair cut there. He had Rob tipped off for Rob to say good words about Barney Eastwood. And Barry McGuigan, of course, was there. I fully intended to turn pro at some stage, but I think it was too early for me. I wanted to do things in the amateurs first. Yeah. Barney Eastwood's gym then was incredible. There was incredible fighters there. There was incredible people there called every day. There was great sparring. And Barney Eastwood gave me a great deal. Initially, I said no to him about 5 times, but he was very insistent. And he got the Brighton millionaire, Paddy Byrne, to call to my house in Ardoyne, a ghetto in a Rolls Royce one morning to get Paddy to try and persuade me to go with Barney. But yeah, he eventually got me.
That's the press conference I had for when I turned pro with Barney Eastwood, and that's Mr. Eastwood with his arm around me. And the press coverage I got was enormous, and the television coverage. And Barney Eastwood said that I was the next McGuigan, and that put me under an awful lot of pressure. Let me walk before I can run. But yeah, he really believed in me. He was a great manager, Barney Eastwood, a lovely fella, God rest his soul. And I got a great deal in them days. I got a great signing on fee. Barry McGuigan, Barry McGuigan, Paul Hodkinson, Dave Boy McAuley, who were other Barney Eastwood fighters who went on to become world champions. They never got a signing on fee. I got $6,000 from Barney Eastwood and £1,000 for each of my first 8 fights. At that time, an incredible deal. But it did put me under an awful lot of pressure. I had to deliver the goods now.
Well, speak to me about your actual dreams when you were in that photograph holding that pen that day. What were your dreams? There was a lot of pressure on you, but tell us what did you imagine lay ahead of you?
See, I was carrying an injury, Len. I had a nose injury. I I was out of boxing for a year after I won the ABAs when I was in peak form. And I wasn't able to box for my country, and I had to turn down international after international because of a nose injury. But Barney Eastwood flew me over to Harley Street, and we got it sorted. And but yeah, the world's my oyster, but still very nervous, very trepidatious. The pressure was enormous. But Barney Eastwood done everything that he could to make me feel comfortable.
What age were you there at that point in time?
19.
And as I said, it was Barney Eastwood took me over to Harley Street to get my nose fixed. And initially, I was to make my debut at Madison Square Garden. June the 17th? The Hector Camacho Edwin Rosario undercard. And after that, I was to fly with Mr. Eastwood and Eddie Shaw to Las Vegas for the spar with Barry McGuigan for his forthcoming world title fight against Stevie Cruz. I mean, this is incredible stuff. Amazing for a young lad. But I actually turned down. I was feeling under that much pressure. I got a great deal financially. Barney Eastwood done so many things for me, but it put me under pressure to deliver the goods. So I actually turned down going to making my debut at Madison Square Garden and going to Las Vegas. I actually turned that down. Talk about regrets. Paul Hodgkinson from Liverpool, he took my place. And I made my debut eventually at Wembley Arena, May the 20th, almost a year after I had won the ABAs. And it was a low-key win against a journeyman called Dean Bramall. But finally, it was on my way. And then eventually I started settling in Barney Eastwood's gym. But then within a year of me being at Barney Eastwood's, within 6 months actually, but Barry McGuigan had that acrimonious fallout with Barney Eastwood, and they went their separate ways. But that affected me greatly. Barry McGuigan leaving was a big factor. Barry McGuigan being in the gym and being world champion was a big factor in me signing with Barney Eastwood. So when he left, I was devastated. And I would have been a much better fighter if Barry McGuigan had stayed. If they hadn't broke up, I would have been much better because I was sparring him, I was learning from him, and they were just wonderful, wonderful times.
Your book has a foreword by Barry McGuigan. You describe how one day Barry McGuigan got your number and he gave you a ring. Tell us about this.
Barry got my number off somebody and he rang me up one day and he says, "Why aren't you boxing? You could be a world champion. Why aren't you?" He says, "I speak to people in London. They're always talking about you. What happened to you? Why aren't you boxing, Eamon?" He says, "I can fix you up with Barry Hearn. You'll be a world champion." He says, "I'll fix you up. You would have to go over and live there." I says, "Well, I can't go over and live there because I've got a partner and I've got a child." He says, "Well, you can do what Eamon Loughlin does. Go over a few weeks before the fight. You'll get the best sparring, you'll get the best coaching." And he says, "Eamon, don't be throwing the boxing away, son. You've got a God-given talent." So he really lifted my confidence, Barry, and he really believed in me. He done a lot for me and I'll always be grateful. And we've got a similar sense of humour, bit of a dry wit, and we're both knowledgeable about boxing. And he rings me up sometimes to get the ESP and local fighters because he lives in England now.
That's 1981, and that's Barry McGuigan there with his arm around me, me with a Wrangler jacket on. So Barry fixed me up to go with Barry Hearn, and he said to me that I could be a world champion. He told Barry Hearn that I could be a world champion also. So during my stay in Romford, he came down one day and brought me up to his house in Faversham in Kent, and it was a stay over. I spent the night there with his wife and kids, and they were charming. But Barry's always been good to me. A mate, I call him a mate.
Of course, he's a well-known name throughout Ireland in the 80s and 90s. Tell me, just tell us a bit more about your relationship with Barry throughout the years, from the beginning till the present day.
Well, me and Barry were sparring partners, and for a while, and he always kept in contact with me, even when he broke up acrimoniously with Barney Eastwood and the Eastwood camp in Belfast when he went to England. He still retained contact with me, and he would have rang me from time to time. But in 1991, as I say, that's when the relationship got deeper, and I spent time with his family and got to know his family. And he's a lovely fella. He's done very well. And one of the greatest fighters ever to come out of Ireland. Terrific fighter, Barry McGuigan. I can't speak highly enough of him as a person, but as a fighter also.
You go into quite a bit of detail about your own character in the book. After a while, you'd become quite a successful professional boxer. Here's yourself again. Tell us what's happening here.
Well, that's myself with Carl Frampton. Carl was two-weight world champion and one of the best fighters ever to come out of Ireland. And that's me down in his old amateur gym. And with me that day was Rinty Monaghan's brother, Tommy. I think it was Tommy taking the photo. And Carl's a charming man and he'd done really, really well. And his career ended a few years ago, but he's got a lot of charisma and he's on TV commercials. He's on TV all the time.
How did you meet this man? Tell me, who is he, first of all? How did you meet him?
A Ballymena man. He done a wee bit of boxing himself, Liam Neeson. And he came down, he was a patron. We got these statues of boxers situated in Belfast, in and around Belfast. There's one at Rinty Monaghan at Cathedral Gardens. There's one at John Caldwell at Dunvale Park. And there's a generic statue to recognise all the great boxers come out of the Shankill Woodvale area and Woodvale Park in the Shankill. So Liam Neeson was our patron. He came over and spent the day with us. But Liam Neeson on the day was lovely. His mother came, his nephews came, and he had time for everyone. But before he met the public, we had an hour in the Sinn Féin office with him. And we had a good chat with him.
But still, saying that, your book details how at one stage you came across this beautiful girl called Karen, but yet you were quite shy in approaching her. Tell us about this.
I'm in the house with Karen now. Yes, no, and I'm not shy in coming forward. Yes, I was a bit of a loner. And I have to say, I have to be honest, when I set eyes on Karen, I was just goggly-eyed. It just knocked me for six. You know, I had never seen a girl as beautiful. And I just instantly fell for her. But she was working in the bar that night. But the thing was, I was drinking. And I'm not a big drinker, never was a big drinker. But I had, you know, when I seen her, you know, I started drinking more that night. And I tried to chat her up. But she rightly put me in my place and told me to go and do one, you know. But the next day when I woke up, she was the first thing in my head. And I started going to the Shamrock where she worked. She was quite young and I started going all the time just to look at her. Bit of a stalker, sorry, but you know, I was young too. But I was besotted with her beauty and I kept trying to get a date with her.
As a professional boxer, there would have been a lot of energy, a lot of passion, but of course it was important to keep this energy in the ring. You describe one night in your book how you're on the dance floor with Karen and these two guys come up and either intentionally or accidentally jostle against you and there was an incident. Tell us about this.
Yes, the best thing to do really is just walk away. But, you know, sometimes your ego takes over and I didn't want to seem to be a coward in front of Karen. So I think that was actually the night I got the doorman to put the two of them out. And the doorman actually hit them a few punches. But there was one night I was dancing with Karen in the GAA and these guys started on me. And they were on the deck, knocked out, before I even realised. It must be instinct. You know, they were picking at me and Karen was on the dance floor with me and I was just boom, boom, you know, before I even had time to think about it, they were on the deck knocked out and they were carried out by the doorman and the doorman never said a word to me. I went and sat down. I'm ashamed of that now. I'm a Christian now. I'm a man of God, but I should have talked my way out of it instead of punching my way out of it. But it was probably because Karen was with me and I didn't want to seem to be a coward. But sure, she knew a box. She knew I was a good boxer. Was never a coward.
Okay, here's another man, another fighting photograph. Tell us what's happening here. Who's this man?
That's Hans of Stone, Roberto Duran. one of the greatest boxers that ever lived. And I was in Panama, and Roberto Duran was exiled there, and he was living in Florida. But when I was in Panama, we had dinner in Luis Spada's house. Luis Spada is a very, very powerful man. And me and Barney Eastwood and Paul Hodgkinson had dinner in Luis Spada's house. He had a big, long table. He had servants, like something out of a film. And during the course of the dinner, his phone rang, and it was Roberto Duran on the other side of the phone. And I didn't get to meet Roberto Duran until 2019 at the Europa Hotel in Belfast when he came over. We had an evening with, and he was wonderful. And I brought the vest that he wore, the Luis Spada gave me. And when I was at the back of the queue was about a quarter of a mile long. But when he seen I had this Panamanian flag, he was assuring me, he was going crazy, very animated for me to come to the top. And I says, I'm not going to bunk everybody. I'll be there eventually. But whenever I got up to meet him, he hugged me and he was all talk.
A point came in your career where you were no longer as successful as before. How did you begin this fall from the peak? How did you handle it?
I had went on a very long unbeaten run. I had went on a maybe 2-3 year unbeaten run where I had won 30 or 31 fights, something like that. I felt invincible. And the guy who came in, the guy beat me, was a last minute replacement. And his name was Andrew Furlong, a big tall guy, southpaw. And he was a last minute replacement. He didn't weigh in with all the rest of the boxers. So I don't think he was the weight that they stated in the boxing news the following week, 9 stone 11. So, yeah, I mean, Barney Eastwood said to me, do you want to take a fight? And I said, yeah, no problem. And yeah, as I say, I thought it was going to be world champion. It had a devastating effect on me. It really a tumultuous effect on me getting beat. I thought it was unbeatable. I really, really did. It had a bit of a breakdown after the fight. And they see, having said that, the guy won on an injury. I had him down in the second round. He won I went over on my ankle in the first round. There's no reason to say if I hadn't damaged my ankle that I could have beat him. But it was still a loss, and I was devastated. I cried in my father's eyes. In his arms. I cried in my father's arms that night. Me and my dad fell out and we hadn't been speaking. But he came up to the dressing room and I cried into his arms like a wee child. And I couldn't accept it. It was very, very hard to accept. But it's even hard now talking about it, as you can see. It still affects me to this day. And I tried to come back. I was to be in Barney Eastwood's next show in February. I trained very hard. I was very diligent. Trained with Sam Story, run up the Cave Hill Mountains, got myself into brilliant shape. And Barney Eastwood pulled me off the show a few days before. And I wanted to come back with a good win. And I believe if I'd had a good win, I would have been back to my best. But I still don't know to this day why he pulled me off the show. But that was another devastating blow. And I seen out my contract then to Barney Eastwood, and then I joined a London promoter, Harry Holland, London manager, London coach, Harry Holland, who was an old friend of mine. And in hindsight, I'd done the wrong thing leaving Barney Eastwood's gym. He rang me up later and he says, Barney Eastwood said to me, I've got a fight for you for the All-Ireland title against, oh my goodness, what was the guy's name? The guy was from East Belfast. It would be for the All-Ireland title as a professional, the first title fight, and I turned it down. I turned it down because he wanted it to be at lightweight, and I says, no, I'm going to box at super featherweight now. But he also turned it down to get back at Barney Eastwood for taking me off the bill in the previous show. A wee bit of childishness that cost me in the long run. But it was never the same when I left Barney Eastwood. It was a great gym. Barney Eastwood used to bring Panamanian and Colombian sparring partners in. There was world champions in the gym, Dave Boy McAuley, Barry McGuigan, Steve Collins, Paul Hodgkinson, Crisanto Espana. It was a gym full of champions, great sparring, everything. And it was a bad decision on my part, looking back now, to leave the gym. Yeah, a few things went wrong, but there you go. It wasn't meant to be. God didn't. God had other plans for me.
You describe in your book a period around the mid-90s when it was suggested to you that you should retire from professional boxing. What was this like for you? Was it a scary period? Tell us about this.
Looking back now, I was full of anxiety during them years. Uh, I didn't know. I just thought it was low self-esteem, and but I had terrible anxiety. Uh, yeah, and there was good and bad. I was up and down. I became a father, passed my driving test, got a job, but I lost my mojo. I lost my self-esteem. I found it very hard to have conversations with people. I would be full of anxiety, and this lasted until I got God in my life, and things changed then. But yes, after the boxing, and even looking back now, I mean, but that's the way it goes. You have to live with it. Worst things happen to people, but I never fulfilled my potential. I certainly never fulfilled my potential, and I finished boxing very, very young.
So after retiring, you then moved into work as a security consultant. Tell us about this.
Security consultant, I used to use that as a joke. When people used to say to me, "Are you a bouncer?" I would have went, "No, I'm a security consultant." It's the same thing, but it's just much posher. Yes, I worked 32 years on the door, and thank God, thank the Lord, I've only had two punches thrown at me, and they both missed. Uh, I'm more of a talker, more of a calmer down, and I've had to throw the odd punch, but it's the last resort, absolute last resort. I've got a nice way about me doing the door, and doing the door. The two most important things a doorman should be is to be helpful to people and to be friendly. Some doormen are very aggressive, but that's they're on an ego trip. I was always a talker and a slager and a bit of banter and helping people, and so I wouldn't have got into that many fights. I've retired now. I'm 60 my next birthday, so I don't do the door no more. I work as in a hostel for homeless people and people with addictions, and that's a very rewarding job. So life's good.
You then moved into and trained in the area of youth work. Why this transition? Tell us about your experience as a youth worker.
I just wanted to help kids, and it was a wee. I mean, the premises wasn't too far away. It was only down the street, and I knew all the kids. I knew all their fathers and uncles, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. Played snooker with them, played pool with them, played table tennis with them. Had the crack and banter with them because I'm not really a big kid at heart myself. But yes, that was a nice time. We went to Norway. We done parachute jumping. Uh, yeah, it was very good. And this was a thing across the divide. This was a project called the Higher Force. It was between the Shankill Stadium and the Pop Bar Ardoyne. So, and this was 1985, 96. Troubles were still simmering. There was still sectarianism and stuff like that. So I brought the kids down to the Shankill Road on a regular basis and for a couple of years. And I can honestly say that not one of the kids I brought down, nor myself, ever had one sectarian comment. Or, we were treated very, very, very well. Very well. And I am friendly with some of them people. I still see some of them people to this day. And we all gelled and we all got on like a house on fire. And two of the kids, one from the Shankill Stadium, and a Protestant lad from the Shankill Stadium, and a kid from the Pop Bar, Catholic kid up here. One had a Rangers top, and one had a Celtic top on at the initial meeting. And they swapped them. And for the remainder of the 6-week program, they each wore each other's tops. So that was a wonderful symbolic start, a wonderful, wonderful start. And there wasn't one row between all the kids over a period of a year, 2 years. There was never an argument. There was never no sectarianism. There was never no animosity or acrimony. It was wonderful. It was just beautiful.
Tell me, tell me about this photo here.
That's myself there, and that's Ricky Hatton holding the book. Ricky, of course, light welterweight and welterweight champion of the world. And that was up in Crown Plaza near Lisburn for an evening with. I found him quite charming. I've met him a few times anyway, but a nice guy.
So, of all your experiences through life, what advice would you give to somebody considering perhaps going into boxing, maybe even your own son? Sum it up. How could you summarize everything? How could you describe your life at this point in time?
Well, one of my sons did box. He was an incredibly successful boxer. He went to the Commonwealth Games, one of the youngest ever boxers to ever go to the Commonwealth Games. He won the Ulster Senior title, just turned 17. He won 7 Irish championships. But the professional game wasn't for him. Sum up my life. I'm in a good place now. I'm 60, coming up 60, my next birthday, and mentally, physically, and spiritually, I'm in a great place. I'm in a very good place, and all thanks and all praise to God.
Eamon McAuley, author of Fighting to Find Peace, A Belfast Boxer's Journey. Thank you for your time today.